Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. Based on real events, the movie is set in Mauritania in November 2001, 2 months after the September 11th attacks. Mohammed Ould Salahi comes to visit his relatives straight from Germany. Everyone is very happy to see him and compliments him. One man even asks him to help his excelling in science nephew with a visa. Later, the ritual celebration continues. Some Americans come to see Mohammed because they want to visit him. Mohammed's cousin is wanted, because he is in bin Laden's group. Mohammed says he doesn't know anything, then goes to change his clothes, and discreetly erases all contacts. His mother is worried that he might not come back. The movie shifts to Albuquerque, New Mexico, in 2005. Nancy Hollander goes to a court hearing, and asks for case files from Terry Duncan, a young girl who is also a lawyer. She meets an acquaintance on the street, and he tells her that a Moorish lawyer approached him in Paris. He tells her the story of Mohammed, who was taken away that fateful night but never returned home, keeping his relatives unaware for 3 years. Now it is known that he is allegedly one of the organizers of the 9/11 attacks. A man asks to call and find out everything about the prisoner, but is denied the information. She tells the rest of her colleagues that she wants to represent Mohammed in court, because it is illegal to imprison a man without trial. Terry agrees to be Nancy's assistant on the trip to Cuba. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Couch and 2 acquaintances talk about the terrorists involved in the 9/11 attacks, because now the cases are against them. Stuart's friend was in one of the towers. They give him the Mohammed Salahi case, and tell him that this man recruited whoever directed the plane into the South Tower, where his friend was. They want Stuart to press charges. Meanwhile, Nancy and Terry have arrived at Guantanamo, where there are strict orders. They are taken to Mohammed. All records made at the prison are considered secret. Mohammed turns out to be a very nice man who speaks English. This surprises Nancy and Terry. At the same time, they also surprise Mohammed, because he is interrogated for 18 hours yearly. He does not even know what he is accused of, and then the lawyers appear. Nancy asks him to sign a paper that would allow them to defend him in court. He somehow agrees and asks to call his mother, but Nancy tells her not to hurry, since the prison staff can listen to the calls. Meanwhile, Stuart Couch is shown all the information about Mohammed Salahi, whom Couch wants to sentence to death. The army cleverly took advantage of Stuart's loss, turning him into an angel of vengeance. Nancy says they need to go to Virginia, because Mohammed has written to them. She also lets Terry know that her critical thinking is fine, and Mohammed may be guilty, but their goal is to spare him from being illegally held in prison. In Virginia, they are escorted to a heavily guarded room in the privacy office, where 2 envelopes containing Mohammed's letters are lying around. Since the government won't let them know about the case, they find out for themselves. They begin to read the papers. Salahi recalls August 5, 2002. He is shaved, handcuffed, injected with something, and photographed. The next day, they take him for interrogation. People treat him nicely, and question him about his past and his training with Al-Qaeda. Stuart, meanwhile, meets his murdered friend's wife in church, and promises that he will avenge him, because he believes he is doing justice. During prayers, someone starts talking to Mohammed on the other side of the bars. He cannot know who it is, because everything is covered with a thick green cloth. He is from Marseille, and Salahi is from Mauritania, so they decide to call each other Marcel and Mauritanian. The number of the man from Marseille is 241, and that is all that is known about him. The government refuses to give any information about him, pretending he doesn't exist. Nancy goes to the man who handed her the case, and asks to find out who the prisoner is. Stuart is told that Nancy Hollander has taken over the case. He is also told of constant inconsistencies in the Salahi case records. They are not dated, but one signature is of an acquaintance of Stuart's. The lieutenant colonel goes to him to find out the details of the case. Stuart asks for access to the data on the case but gets nothing. The confidential information department has plastered with a marker over important details from Salahi's letters. Mohammed's interrogation reveals that he was reported by an Al-Qaeda member, who must have had names poked out of him as well, and had to throw it all off on someone. The interrogators reveal their cards. They were told that he was guilty of recruiting people for Al-Qaeda, and that he would face bad consequences unless he proves otherwise. Mohammed speaks again with 241 prisoner about what is going on, and casually recalls how in his school days, he won a scholarship to study in Germany. In 2005, the government approved access to classified information. Nancy received plenty of boxes of files, but almost all of them were concealed with a black marker, cutting off the possibility of finding anything at all. On the other hand, Stuart Couch receives the same thing but without the corrections. Technically, none of this is evidence, but Stewart is under pressure and has to hurry. Looking for new ways to win the case, he visits his old comrade again, and asks for access to the secret data, but the man sleepily refuses, and says that he has to fly to Guantanamo himself, and ask the general for access to the information. Nancy and Terry once again fly to Muhammad and recount everything his mother told them. At the same time, Terry accidentally blabs about the privacy office reading his letters, and determining the level of secrecy. This makes Muhammad terribly angry, because he believes it is just between him and Nancy. But the woman convinces him to calm down and sue the government. At Guantanamo, Nancy meets Stewart, who invites her out for a beer, and then a complicated conversation begins. Stewart is very confident of winning, and even tries to shame Nancy for defending this man. On the plane, Nancy says she needs to change her defense logic, and find someone other than Muhammad. Stewart goes to see the conditions in which the prisoners are held, and is very surprised. The temperature in the cells is 11 degrees. He asks the general why they are doing this, but does not get a clear answer. Meanwhile, Muhammad learns English, and tries to find some humanity in the guards, but in vain. Marcel is upset by a letter from his wife, for it is only a letter, and he cannot see her. Muhammad writes about how he met his first love in Germany. When he saw on television what was happening in the world, he set out determinedly to defend his country, fighting on a side that included America. But the whole problem is that he trained with Al-Qaeda from 1990 to 1992. The investigators ask him why he deleted all his contacts from his phone when he was arrested. Muhammad just didn't want trouble for his friends. The investigators don't believe that. This begins to upset Muhammad, but he doesn't lose heart, and reminds Marcel that they will definitely get out of there, and get to their home. Nancy is asked why she is protecting a terrorist, and she explains that she is fighting for justice. One of Stewart's men asks for information, for which he is subsequently fired. Nancy reports that they can't find this man from Marseille with whom Muhammad was, so maybe he doesn't exist at all. Salahi asks the guard about his friend from Marseille, and learns that he has been dead for a month. The guard says the man strangled himself. This news leaves the man in awe, and he prays for all the living and the dead. Nancy and Terry begin to be pursued by people with American flags, shouting at them outside the courthouse to remember the horrors of 9/11. The judge agrees with Nancy, and they receive the no longer classified information on the Muhammad Salahi case. Terry is shocked by the contents, for in the papers, Muhammad confesses to everything he has been accused of. Terry has sacrificed so much for this case, which turned out to be a failure, but Nancy has no intention of listening to her complaints, and says that she is free to leave, and that she will keep working on the case. She says that you can't win a case if you don't believe in yourself, and Terry leaves in tears. Muhammad, meanwhile, recalls how the people who interrogated him handed the case over to the military, and warned them that they would not be ceremonious. The military came into the room and put a bag over his head. Nancy arrives at Salahi's house, and talks about Terry dropping the case, and mentions Salahi's confession. Muhammad tells her that he was forced to do it. Then Nancy explains to him that this is what the letters are for, otherwise, how will she know the truth? All this angers Muhammad, for he has already completely lost faith in getting out of there. Nancy says one last thing: if he does not write letters, he will have to find another lawyer. Stewart meets his acquaintance Neil, and accuses him of hiding information from the others, but he does not get a sensible answer. Muhammad recalls that it was Neil who tortured him, and forced him to confess to the murder. He writes it all down in a letter. Muhammad is then transferred to another cell, where there is no Quran, and no normal temperature. Nancy receives a new letter from Muhammad. At night, Neil comes into Stewart's office, and tells him about what was going on in those days, as well as showing him the secret memos. That night, Stewart and Nancy learned the truth about what was going on at Guantanamo Bay. He had been tortured by lack of sleep, loud music, forced water infusions to induce panic, beatings, sexual humiliation, and mockery of his infertility. The threat of his mother's arrest forced Muhammad to reveal all these abuses. He went mad right there in the cell where he was tortured. Stewart can't believe what's going on, and Nancy can't hold back her tears as she reads the letters. They tortured him for months, beating him constantly, and doing whatever they wanted to him. When he was no longer thinking or even able to speak, they said they had detained his mother, and would put her in jail with him. Muhammad decided to confess to things he had not done, but they made him confess to other things as well, making a scapegoat out of him. Stewart, realizing the complexity of the situation, goes to church. Then he explains himself to the man who put him on the case, refusing to press charges. Stewart is called a traitor. Nancy arrives to support Muhammad, and asks him to publish all the letters as a book. Stewart packs his things and leaves the place where he worked. Everyone calls him a traitor, and writes about him in the newspapers. He goes to see Nancy, and after discussing the case, they decide to be on the same side. Stewart asks her to look in box number 32, which contains the polygraph results, and they were twice positive. Nancy makes a copy of them for Terry, who finally finds the prisoner and his family. Nancy puts Terry back to work. In 2009, a meeting begins, where Salahi joins from the prison via video link, and gives a moving speech about racism, and about 8 years of difficult imprisonment. In 2010, he receives a letter from Guantanamo, stating that he has won the case, and joyfully goes home. But even though Salahi won the case, he continues to be in prison for another 7 years. He never saw his mother because she died in 2013. Nancy and Terry helped him fight until his release. After a long trial, Salahi published his book in 2015, which became a bestseller. He was released on October 17, 2016, after spending 14 years and 2 months in prison for nothing. He was never charged. He returned to Mauritania and married lawyer Kitty. They had a son, Ahmed, but he could not see his mother regularly from America, because they had visa problems. Nancy Hollander is still struggling with injustice in this world. One of her clients is still being held in Guantanamo. Stuart Couch works for the Justice Department as an immigration judge. Terry Duncan continues to work as an attorney in death penalty cases. Neither service has apologized to Guantanamo prisoners for what happened. Of the 779 prisoners, only 5 have been prosecuted, and 3 have been ordered released by an appellate court. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.